And Doc, what are my rights in the workplace? You know, if either myself or a colleague gets infected, what should I know? And what are my rights in the workplace?
You as an individual need to take on your responsibility within the population. If you are sick or been exposed to the virus, you should not attend your workplace. You should let them know, and your HR department will deal with it and say in terms of leave, how, and I can't give comment to that because every organization would do that differently. But from a medical standpoint, and being able to protect yourself and the rest of the population, if you're not feeling well, or you have any symptoms of COVID-19, or you've been exposed, you should let your company know, and you should work within their policy and framework. And you would hope that all the employees within the organization would do the same. Obviously, there are company obligations, there are business obligations, and in terms of for a business to be approved to be able to open, they had to go through to get approved. They've got to have certain protocols in place, cleaning protocols, test protocols if individuals are positive, and I would hope that any organization that's operating with employees coming onto the work side actually have all these procedures and processes in place, and that would come through from the company. So in other words, it's a partnership. It's a partnership between the employee and the employer. Both need to fulfill their parts. The employee in terms of their own in terms of obligations to others, and also the employer also needs to obviously tick all the boxes and make sure that they've got a proper COVID-19 program in place, and they've got all the mitigations. And therefore, when you as an individual, healthy individual, go into your work environment, you should know that you are safe, you're not spreading it onto others, and your workplace is safe. If that is not happening and you don't feel that, then you should go speak to the HR department and ask them about that. And if you still don't get satisfactory answers, then you should obviously contact, and there are many websites in terms of labor relations and labor regulations in terms of to get further information on.
And I know this is a very difficult question to answer, Doc, but when do you think this whole thing will blow over? Do we have any possible timelines for a vaccine, maybe?
We don't actually know. And we actually, as I've said quite through this interview, we're actually in the midst of the pandemic, right? How it's going to turn out, we don't know. So what I can say is a couple of things. One, as I've said within our discussion, is that we're in for the long haul here. It's not a short-term process, right? Even if we peak end of July, August, that's the peak. It's going to be around for a long time, probably well into next year as well, in terms of dealing and living with this pandemic and living with this virus. So any structures, mitigations, the way we deal with it, we should realize that this is a long-term process. And once again, as our president has said, and a lot of it, we need to learn to live side by side with the virus. It's a long-term process. The second thing is what's being done. How will this ever end? So there are only three possible ways that this could potentially end. One is actually we develop herd immunity. And by herd immunity is that enough people get exposed within the population that the chance of one individual spreading it onto another is much less, significantly less. But just to say, we're nowhere near that. No country in the world is close to getting to herd immunity levels, and at best that will only be sometime next year, if that at all. That's the first way of getting rid of the virus. The second way, as I said, is a vaccine. Now we know that there are many trials that are being started. There are some vaccines that are showing some promise, but there's no direct specific vaccine that's been given the tick and go ahead and said this is the vaccine for coronavirus. Let's produce it in a mass for around the world. So we're not there yet. And even if we did get that type of vaccine, to produce it for around 7 billion people would actually take a long time to produce that vaccine. So once again, that could only be potentially next year to get a vaccine, I think, to have any effect. And the third methodology, as I said, and we've spoken a bit about it, if there's a cure to treating the virus, then there's probably less risk and worry, because if you get it, you just take a tablet and it cures the virus. But it seems we're very far off on all of those. We're far off from herd immunity. We started trials on vaccines, but we're still quite far off, and we're quite far off from a treatment for this virus. So the answer to your question is, I can't tell you when it will end, but what I can say is that we're in for the long haul here. And therefore, because we're in for the long haul, let's learn to live with the virus, side by side with the virus, have the correct mitigations in place. And I'll repeat it once again, wear your mask, right? Continual hand washing and sanitizing your hands, and social distancing. Let's be cautious as we go out there, and let's go out into the world with a positive attitude. And I think that way we'll learn to live side by side with this virus. But as our president says, and I will reiterate that, it's going to be around for a long time. A long time.
Wow.
And yeah, hope that answers your question.